Why intelligent people don't care about social life. Truth about social withdrawal. Have you ever felt like you're performing your way through life, smiling, nodding, fitting in, yet silently drifting further from who you truly are? In this episode, we go beyond the surface to explore why intelligent and emotionally aware individuals often feel detached in social settings. But this isn't about isolation, it's about awakening. Through the lens of depth psychology and timeless insight, we'll guide you into a space where solitude is no longer a punishment, but a path toward emotional healing, inner clarity, and radical self-acceptance. If you've ever felt like you don't quite belong in this noisy world, stay with us. What you'll discover may just bring you home. Have you ever felt lonely in a crowd? Have you ever stood in the middle of a crowded room surrounded by noise, smiles, and movement, yet felt completely invisible? Have you nodded politely, laughed at the right moments, played the role expected of you, only to return home feeling like a stranger to yourself? It's a strange kind of emptiness, one that doesn't come from being alone, but from being unseen even while being looked at. This kind of loneliness doesn't shout, it whispers quietly beneath the surface, a subtle ache that builds over time. And the more you try to ignore it, the louder it gets. You start to wonder if everyone else is truly connecting, or if they're just better at pretending. You begin to ask yourself if you're broken, or if the world has simply forgotten how to be real. There's a quiet truth that few admit. Many people are not really present in their social lives. They show up in body but not in spirit. Their words are rehearsed, their reactions borrowed. The energy in the room is often just a performance, an endless loop of faces trying to belong. But beneath that performance, there's something deeper waiting to be seen. If you've ever felt this way, this isn't weakness. It isn't something to hide. It's the beginning of a deeper awareness. That pain you feel is not the absence of connection. It is the hunger for something more real, more meaningful. It's your inner self trying to surface through the noise. And maybe, just maybe, this emptiness is not a void to be feared, but a space to be honored. A quiet invitation to come home to yourself. Why intelligent people often find social life meaningless. It may sound harsh at first. The idea that intelligent people might see social life as meaningless can seem cold or even arrogant. But beneath that judgment lies a quieter, more honest truth. It is not that intelligent minds hate people. It is that they crave something deeper than what most social settings can offer. They are not content with surface-level connections. They seek conversations that touch the soul, interactions that hold truth, and relationships that reflect mutual growth. Society teaches us early on that being social equals being successful, that the more parties you attend, the more valuable you must be, that the louder your life appears, the fuller it is. But intelligence does not always follow that script. Intelligent people often step back and observe. They notice the patterns, the repetition, the rituals. They begin to ask uncomfortable questions. What am I really gaining from these interactions? Do these connections nourish me or drain me? Am I truly seen here? This perspective is not born from bitterness, but from clarity. Intelligent minds are wired to seek meaning, and when meaning is absent, presence feels forced. The smiles become masks. The words lose weight. The energy feels diluted. Over time, the intelligent individual might start to withdraw, not out of pride, but out of self-preservation. They are not antisocial. They are selectively social. They are not dismissing people. They are protecting their time, their energy, their truth. And in doing so, they are not rejecting connection. They are simply refusing to settle for less than what is real. Superficial conversations and the nameless exhaustion they bring. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation that felt more like a performance than a genuine exchange? You smile, nod, and respond on cue. Yet inside you feel detached, as if you're watching yourself from a distance. These interactions, though socially acceptable, often leave a lingering sense of emptiness. In many social settings, conversations revolve around topics that skim the surface, weather, recent events, or popular trends. While these discussions can serve as social lubricants, they rarely delve into the depths of personal experience or meaningful connection. For individuals who seek authenticity, such interactions can be draining. This phenomenon isn't about arrogance or elitism, it's about a desire for substance. When conversations lack depth, they fail to engage the mind and heart. Over time, engaging in these superficial exchanges can lead to a sense of isolation, even in the presence of others. Moreover, the constant exposure to shallow interactions can dull one's emotional sensitivity. The repetition of meaningless dialogues may cause individuals to question the value of social engagement altogether. They might begin to withdraw, not out of disdain, but as a means of self-preservation. However, it's important to recognize that not all social interactions are devoid of meaning. By seeking out and fostering relationships that encourage open, honest, and profound conversations, individuals can find the connection they crave. It's through these deeper interactions that one can experience true understanding and emotional fulfillment. Superficial conversations and the nameless exhaustion they bring. Have you ever left a gathering feeling more tired than when you arrived, even though nothing dramatic happened? You laughed when expected, responded when spoken to, played your part politely, yet something felt missing. That missing piece is depth. In a world flooded with surface-level dialogue, the absence of depth weighs heavier than we realize. Most conversations revolve around safe topics designed to keep things light. We talk about the weather headlines or the latest trends, not because they matter deeply, but because they are easy. They do not require vulnerability. They do not challenge. They protect us from silence, but in doing so, they also shield us from meaning. For intelligent and introspective minds, this can be exhausting. Engaging in repetitive, shallow exchanges slowly chips away at their inner clarity. These minds do not seek noise. They seek resonance. They are drawn to truth, to substance, to emotional authenticity. Without it, they begin to feel unseen and misunderstood even when surrounded by people. Over time, this fatigue grows. The mask becomes heavier, the performance more draining, and eventually withdrawal becomes a necessity rather than a choice. Not out of coldness, but as a quiet rebellion against the emptiness of forced connection. Yet this is not a rejection of people. It is a longing for something real. And perhaps underneath all the fatigue is a silent hope that one day someone will sit across from you, not just to speak, but to understand, not just to respond, but to feel. And in that rare moment of truth, the exhaustion will lift. When you start to see the illusions, others don't. There comes a moment when you no longer take things at face value. You begin to see through the smiles, the social rituals, the conversations that go nowhere. It is not bitterness that drives this shift. It is awareness, a quiet awakening that makes the familiar suddenly feel false. You notice how much of daily life is built on repetition and pretense. People laugh when they do not feel joy. They agree to avoid conflict. They speak not to be understood, but to be accepted. This shift in perception can be both liberating and isolating. Because once you start seeing clearly, it becomes harder to pretend. You become sensitive to the gap between appearance and truth. What used to comfort now feels empty. What once passed unnoticed now stands out. The noise becomes louder, the mask more obvious, and silence once feared becomes sacred. In this new clarity, you may find yourself questioning everything, not to rebel, but to understand. Why do we follow scripts that make us feel disconnected? Why do we chase validation at the cost of authenticity? These questions are not meant to destroy. They are meant to reveal, to uncover the quiet truth buried beneath conformity. And when you find it, even if it sets you apart, it brings you closer to yourself. Intelligence creates distance, and that is inevitable. When the mind grows sharper, it does not just gather more information. It begins to see patterns hidden beneath the surface. It notices contradictions, hears what is left unsaid, and senses the emotional currents flowing beneath casual words. This kind of perception changes how a person experiences the world. Because once you see more, you also feel more, and what you feel is not always easy to carry. Intelligence often brings with it a heightened awareness, not only of external dynamics, but of internal conflict. The intelligent person sees not just the behavior of others, but the reasons behind it, the fears, the insecurities, the need to be seen and validated. And in seeing this, they begin to feel a strange disconnection. It is not that they do not care, it is that they care too deeply and yet find little space where that depth is met. This distance is not a wall built out of arrogance, but a space created by clarity. When you no longer accept the surface as enough, you naturally drift from places where the surface is all that is offered. Conversations that once seemed normal begin to feel shallow. Relationships that once felt safe begin to feel scripted. And in that shift, you begin to crave truth more than company. It can feel lonely to see what others do not. It can feel cold to stand in clarity while others remain in comfort. But the distance intelligence creates is not punishment. It is a path that leads inward, that strengthens your sense of self, that teaches you how to be whole even when you stand apart. The cost of awareness is isolation and self-doubt. Awareness is not always a gift wrapped in clarity. Sometimes it feels like a weight, a quiet burden that presses against your sense of belonging. The more you understand the world, the more you begin to feel like you no longer fit within it. You see through the roles, the performances, the distractions, and suddenly the places that once comforted you now feel hollow. You may start to question yourself deeply. Why do I feel this way? Why can't I enjoy what others seem to love? Am I broken? These questions do not arise from weakness, but from a mind that sees too much and a heart that feels it all. You begin to notice the cracks in the foundation of what others call normal. You feel distant from the very people you once felt close to. This isolation is not loud. It does not come with dramatic exits or bold declarations. It settles slowly, a growing sense that the more you awaken, the more you walk alone. You want to share what you see, what you feel, but words fall short, and most are not ready to listen. So you retreat, not out of rejection, but out of quiet protection. Yet in this solitude, you begin to find something unexpected, a kind of strength that comes from facing yourself without distraction, a clarity that rises from sitting in discomfort without fleeing. It is in this space that transformation begins, because when you stop trying to belong to a world that does not understand you, you begin to build a world within that finally does. Learn to be selective. Not everyone deserves your energy. Not all connections are equal. Some nourish you, some drain you. Learning the difference is not cynicism, it is wisdom. When you begin to value your peace more than your image, your choices start to shift. You no longer feel the need to attend every event, respond to every message, or keep every relationship alive out of guilt. You realize your time and energy are limited and must be guarded like something sacred. Being selective is not about isolation. It is about intention. It is the act of choosing who enters your space and what kind of energy you allow around you. This choice is a form of self-respect. It says, I am not available for what depletes me. I am not obligated to perform. I am allowed to protect my well-being. This shift can feel uncomfortable at first. You may feel guilty for saying no or stepping back, but over time you will notice a deeper clarity. The noise begins to fade, the tension in your body starts to ease, and in that space you begin to feel yourself again. Selective connection leads to meaningful connection. When you stop scattering your energy, you can give fully to what truly matters. And in that giving, you no longer feel drained. You feel purposeful. Being selective is not a rejection of others. It is a commitment to authenticity, a decision to build relationships based on truth, not pressure. Protecting your space is not selfish. It is essential because when you protect your space, you protect your ability to grow, to create, to stay whole in a world that constantly asks you to split yourself apart. When you no longer need acceptance, you begin to feel free. Something powerful happens when you stop needing to be accepted. You start showing up differently. You stop adjusting your voice to fit the room. You stop shrinking your truth to make others comfortable. You begin to speak not to impress, but to express. You listen not to respond, but to understand. You stop living as a version of yourself that is easier for others to digest. The need for acceptance is deeply human. We all want to be seen, loved, and understood. But when that need becomes a condition for your self-worth, it becomes a cage. You begin to betray parts of yourself to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, to stay in the circle. And in doing so, you start to feel less alive, less real. Freedom begins when you realize you do not need to be liked to be whole. You do not need applause to feel valuable. Your worth is not tied to the number of hands that clap for you, but to how honestly you can stand in your truth. This shift is not easy. It takes courage to stop performing and start being, to stop chasing approval and start trusting your own voice. But once you cross that threshold, you feel lighter. You enter rooms without the weight of expectation. You connect with people from a place of honesty, not obligation, and slowly the fear of not being accepted fades, replaced by the quiet strength of self-respect. This is the kind of freedom that changes everything. It is not loud or dramatic. It is steady, rooted, and calm. It does not demand attention because it already knows its worth. Solitude is not a punishment. It is the privilege of the awakened mind. Solitude is often misunderstood. People associate it with loneliness, with emptiness, with something to escape. But for those who have seen through the noise of the world, solitude becomes something else entirely. It becomes a sanctuary, a place not of absence but of presence, a space where you no longer have to perform or explain, where your energy is no longer divided. In solitude, the awakened mind finds clarity. Without the pull of other voices, you begin to hear your own thoughts again. Thoughts that have been buried beneath obligations, noise, and social scripts. In the stillness, you reconnect with the parts of yourself you forgot in the rush to belong. You remember what matters not to others, but to you. This is not withdrawal from life. It is a deeper engagement with it, When you are no longer driven by the need to be seen, you can finally see you notice details you once missed. You feel emotions more fully. You create, think, reflect without interruption. You become more whole, not less. Solitude does not make you cold. It makes you real. It strips away the false and leaves you with what is true, and what is true does not need to be loud. It simply needs to be lived. The world may pull at you, tell you to return to the noise to be like everyone else, but once you have tasted the depth of solitude, it becomes difficult to return to the shallow. The awakened mind knows that peace is not found in the crowd, but in the quiet, and in that quiet you finally come home. Quiet but powerful life strategies of intelligent people. Intelligent people often live with intention, not noise. They do not rush to speak or seek to be seen. Instead, they observe, they listen, they choose. Their power does not lie in how loudly they move, but in how precisely they live. Every action is thoughtful. Every connection is filtered. Every word is considered before it is spoken. One of their greatest strategies is protecting their attention. They know that what they focus on shapes who they become. So they guard their energy from unnecessary distractions, meaningless conversations, and emotionally draining environments. This allows them to preserve clarity and stay rooted in what matters. Another strategy is emotional independence. They feel deeply but do not outsource their inner world to others. They do not depend on external approval to validate their worth. Instead, they build an inner foundation that remains steady no matter how the outside world shifts. Selective communication is also key. They speak less, but when they do, their words carry weight. They do not talk to fill silence. They speak to express something meaningful, and because they value stillness, they bring calm into every space they enter. These quiet strategies may go unnoticed by most, but they create a powerful presence. A presence that does not need to dominate to be felt. A presence built not on control, but on self-mastery. In a world that rewards noise, intelligence moves in silence, and in that silence it creates impact. Silence isn't emptiness. It is a form of strength. Most people are afraid of silence. They fill it with noise, with conversation, with distractions, anything to avoid the stillness. But silence is not a void, it is a mirror. It reflects what we often try to ignore, our thoughts, our fears, our truths. And for those who are brave enough to sit with it, silence becomes a teacher. In silence, you begin to hear what really matters. You realize how much of your life has been shaped by outside voices, by expectations, by noise that does not belong to you. And in that realization, you find the power to reclaim your attention, to choose your own thoughts, your own path. Silence builds resilience. It teaches patience, focus, and inner calm. It does not rush. It does not demand. It simply is. And in that simplicity, there is strength. You do not need to speak loudly to be powerful. You do not need to be constantly seen to be impactful. Sometimes the most powerful presence is the one that listens, the one that waits, the one that observes in stillness. So do not fear silence. Embrace it. Let it clear the clutter inside you. Let it sharpen your vision. Let it guide you back to who you really are. Turning loneliness into healing where you truly return to yourself. Loneliness can feel like an empty ache, a space where something should be. But what if that space is not a void, but an opening? A doorway to something deeper. When you stop trying to fill the silence and instead learn to sit with it, something begins to shift. You start to notice the parts of yourself you abandoned, the dreams you silenced, the feelings you ignored. This is the beginning of healing. Not by escaping, but by returning. Returning to your own breath, your own thoughts, your own truth. You realize that the loneliness you feared is actually space. Space to feel, to process, to reconnect. Healing happens when you stop running and start listening. When you meet yourself where you are without judgment. In that quiet space, you begin to rebuild piece by piece with tenderness and care. And as you heal, loneliness transforms. It no longer feels like something missing. It becomes a companion. A reminder that your wholeness was never out there. It was always within. Finding meaning in life when you stop searching outward and return inward. We spend much of our lives looking outward for meaning, chasing success, approval, connection, hoping something outside will complete us. But meaning is not something you find. It is something you uncover within. It is not given by the world. It is revealed when you begin to ask deeper questions and truly listen. When you stop running toward noise and return to yourself, you begin to hear the quiet truth of what really matters. Not what impresses others, but what aligns with your soul. What brings peace? What sparks purpose? What makes you feel alive? This is the turning point. The moment you stop seeking to fit in and start choosing to live in alignment, you let go of roles you were never meant to play and reclaim the path that is truly yours. Meaning is not loud. It does not need an audience. It is quiet, steady, and deeply personal. And when you find it, you realize you were never lost, only distracted from who you already were. And now you see it clearly. You were never too much. You were simply too deep for a world that fears depth. The silence you once avoided has become your strength. The solitude you once resisted has become your home. And in that still, quiet place within you no longer need to be understood to feel whole. You are not alone, you are aligned. And that changes everything.